What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Now, once upon a time when we thought Marvel Studios would continue putting out 3 or even 4 movies a year, we assumed there would be a lot more films to come between Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, giving Marvel Studios a lot more film real estate and time to explain what's going on in the story. Well, as it would turn out, the only film we're getting in between those two happens to be Spider-Man 4, save some huge announcement from Marvel that they are throwing a third film in there, but we actually got confirmation from a huge industry insider source yesterday as to what's going on with some of those films that we thought we would see in the Multiverse Saga, like Thor 5, but also Doctor Strange 3 and Shang-Chi 2. That's where we pick up today with the update that both of those movies are indeed being made, but we know when they're filming and what that means for their release timeline. We're breaking down this latest update for Doctor Strange 3 and Shang-Chi 2, now part of Phase 7 and the Mutant Saga. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button. We do daily Marvel content at the channel. That's all we do. So if that's for you, hit the sub button, leave a comment down below. That will automatically enter you to win our ongoing PS5 giveaway. We've got 3 in like the next 60 days with Daredevil, Captain America, Brave New World, and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Again, all you got to do is be a sub, leave a comment. If you want, stick around at the end of the video. We get into all the giveaway stuff again there. Okay, so really quick catch up on where we are officially with Marvel Studios, the films and phases. Marvel ends Phase 5 with the Thunderbolts and kicks off Phase 6 with the Fantastic Four. We also know that it'll be a super short official phase with just the Fantastic Four, 2 Avengers films, and Spider-Man 4. That means that every movie after Avengers Secret Wars, we're assuming there will be one in late 2027, and then going on from there will be part of Phase 7, kicking off the Mutant Saga. And Marvel Studios has already announced they're rolling it back to 2 movies and 3 TV shows going forward. Now, yesterday, trusted industry insider Daniel Rickman, you guys can follow him over on RPK News on Twitter, had several updates from Marvel, but this is what I thought was the most interesting one. He came out and said, quote, "I hear that Doctor Strange 3 and Shang-Chi 2 are not filming until 2026. Okay, so what this means reasonably is that neither of these films are coming out before Avengers Secret Wars. If anything, one of them will be the second film in 2027 after Secret Wars, but let's be real here, okay? Blade's been waiting in line patiently for over a half decade, and you could see Mahershala Ali busting up in Marvel Studios headquarters with the sword actually being Blade if he finds out that Shang-Chi 2 or Doctor Strange 3 actually got greenlit and made before his movie, where they were literally less than a month to sending it to filming before it all fell apart, for like the 3rd time at that point. The other huge asterisk here was obviously Destin Daniel Cretton, who would have worked on Shang-Chi 2 and originally Kang Dynasty Avengers 5, wouldn't have had the time to really shoot and write both of these movies unless it was a concurrent deal where the stories worked together and they shot them at the same time. Still, I wouldn't wish that on any creative, and so we always knew Shang-Chi was going to be delayed because he took the job on Spider-Man 4. No one really assumed that was coming out before the Multiverse Saga ended. We also found out recently Thor 5 was basically the same deal. It's for somewhere down the road. But the one movie we all assumed maybe needed to come out, and before we get to the Multiverse Saga, was Doctor Strange 3, and only because they basically ushered Doctor Strange to the center of the Multiverse Saga early on in Phase 4, really made him one of the only point of view characters that has a real bird's eye on what's going on, and you would assume that that post-credit scene where they entered the Dark Dimension to stop an incursion, whatever happened there would play directly into the plot line for the next 2 Avengers films, and without having had a Doctor Strange 3 to explore that, sort of feels like we might be missing some very important information. Now, of course, how they'll handle it is what I expect is going to happen a lot in the couple of Avengers films, where there's a quick exposition dump of someone who does know what's going on to fill everyone in, but mostly us, the viewers. And if anything, when we get to Doctor Strange 3, they'll do a flashback at the beginning of the film to any important scenes and show us what really happened. Still, Marvel Studios is probably not interested in putting out any sort of major prequels. They looked at Black Widow, which came out after the Infinity Saga, and while it was no less a film, just didn't perform as well as it would have if it had been a part of the Infinity Saga. And I think the same can be said for a lot of prequels in recent times coming from Disney, where, say, Andor the Star Wars show is absolutely amazing. I happen to really enjoy it, but as far as ratings and numbers go, no one is watching that show. And you could argue it's because people already know exactly how it's going to end leading up to the moments of Rogue One. Quick side note, also my favorite Star Wars film, but you know that franchise has seen its own problems over the last 4 or 5 years. Marvel Studios is definitely trying to learn and avoid any mistakes. One of them includes making prequels that aren't exciting because they have no agency and we already know what's going to happen. Now, as far as Phase 7, where does that leave us? Well, actually pretty full already. Number one, we already know that they're making the X-Men reboot that's currently being written, and you know Marvel Studios wants wants to kick off the Mutant Saga with a bang and not have a huge lull in between Secret Wars and whenever that X-Men film comes out, I assume 2028 at the latest. Then you go ahead and add on Thor 5, now Shang-Chi 2 and Doctor Strange 3, as well as Blade. That brings us up to 5 films that we know for sure are coming. And while some of these next names and titles might not fit into Phase 7 per se, rather 8 or 9, somewhere deeper in the Multiverse Saga, there's also some safe assumptions we can make. Number 1, Fantastic Four is going to get a second film. We also know that they're going to make a Midnight Suns that Blade is going to lead into. That brings us to 7. Speaking of second installments, I would be very surprised if we didn't get a Deadpool and Wolverine 2. And of course, another film that we know they're making from confirmations now, both in the Hollywood Trader and from Denzel Washington himself, is Black Panther 3. That's 8 Marvel films, and at 2 films a year and starting halfway through 2027, that already brings us into the beginning of 2031. And while I don't know about you guys, I'm certainly not thinking about 2031 at this rate. I'm just thinking about next week. Now, in that same sense, we've talked a lot about a soft reboot for Marvel Studios, or basically Marvel Studios restarting the MCU when they rebuild the multiverse. But it feels like, and given this report, God, there's going to be more familiar faces than ever. Some immediate holdovers like the Fantastic Four, new characters we've just met in the last couple of years like Ms. Marvel, but then also all these old characters returning who are part of the old guard, the original cinematic universe. And while I do not suspect that every OG character is going to survive the events of Avengers Secret Wars, I think that having a lot of familiar faces like this and some of the old guard to continue forward is going to make the MCU still feel nostalgic in a way that it needs to, instead of being fresh and brand new at this phase in the superhero cycle, because they're actually going to lose some fans who will say, hey, there's nothing there that I actually enjoyed from the original MCU. That being said, the real trick here, the lesson that needs to be learned, is that as we go into the new phase and whatever the lineup looks like for characters left in the MCU, we need to know who our Tony Stark and our Steve Rogers are right out the gate. Our point of view characters need to be introduced at the beginning of the saga, and they need to be a through thread in the way that they did not continue with a lot of characters. Look, I've said this recently at the channel as well, but Shang-Chi should have been in the MCU at least 2 or 3 times since his first film. We should have seen him again, but we haven't. And so it makes it a lot harder to care about his character in the upcoming Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars when we don't really see the connective tissue that, say, we had for Tony Stark, we had for Steve Rogers by the time we even get to Avengers 1. And of course, Avengers 1, they weren't a team. They had to galvanize there. It's going to happen in Doomsday too. But the problem is that in the meantime, there's no even connection there. Several characters who are supposed to be the main Avengers have not even spoken to each other on screen. I keep bringing this up. We know Sam Wilson has been to Wakanda. We know Wakanda has been making his suits. Presumably, he knows Shuri, but have they spoken on screen in the MCU yet? While you guys see my point, really the only thing that has any real feels value, quote unquote, right now that I see on the immediate horizon, maybe outside of the Fantastic Four, is the Thunderbolts, and that's a great thing. You guys let me know all your thoughts down below. I am all ears as always. Quickly, let's get in the giveaway stuff before I let you go. We're still giving away PlayStation 5s. Just be a sub, leave a comment. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at IamFires. Thanks for checking out the channel. Stick around. We'll be posting again real soon.